In the blink of an eye, Adam was standing in his bedroom. The next second, he was on an ancient battlefield. The low beat of war drums echoed in his ears. The sky felt like it was closing in, and shadows of soldiers and riders surrounded him. He didn't know what had just happened, but one thing was clear: he wasn't in his world anymore. Everything in front of him belonged to another time. Every day I will bring you wonderful novel stories. All you need is a simple subscription and a like. Evening breeze drifted through the open window as Adam leaned back in his chair, absent-mindedly tapping the rim of his whiskey glass. The dim lights of his studio apartment barely illuminated the stacks of manuscripts on his desk, his laptop, and the dusty bookshelf to the right of him. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, but something about that night felt different. An unusual tension hung in the air, as if the universe was preparing for something. Lost in thought, Adam glanced at the time on his phone. The screen flickered for a second before showing an unreadable glitch. A low hum filled the room, growing louder until it seemed to echo from the walls. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his head, forcing Adam to grip the sides of his chair. The sound intensified, and the light flickered wildly. In that moment, he felt the floor disappear beneath him. His body tumbled through darkness, cold and infinite. Then, just as abruptly, everything stopped. When Adam opened his eyes, the familiar surroundings of his studio were gone. Instead, he found himself standing on cobblestone streets. Tall, traditional buildings with red-tiled roofs lined both sides, and the air carried the distinct scent of incense mixed with something faintly metallic. Confused and disoriented, Adam took a step forward, his modern clothes strikingly out of place in the unfamiliar environment. "What the hell?" he muttered, rubbing his temples. A voice called out from behind him, soft but urgent. Sir," turning around, Adam saw a young man approaching quickly. He wore a dark blue robe, his hair tied back with a strip of silk. Everything about him screamed the early 20th century or earlier. "You must be the new scholar, yes?" The man's eyes lit up as if he'd been expecting Adam all along. "I've been sent to escort you to the commander. He's been awaiting your arrival." Adam blinked. "Scholar? Wait. Where am I?" The man chuckled, a mixture of amusement and confusion. "You're in Khan City, the capital of the southern provinces. Do you not remember the details of your assignment? Come, we must hurry. The commander is not known for his patience." Khan City? Adam's mind raced. Southern provinces? None of this made sense. But he was no longer in his world. That much was clear. He didn't know how he had gotten here or why, but one thing was certain: he needed to play along until he figured it out. He followed the man down the winding streets, his senses on high alert. The city was alive with the sounds of people haggling in the marketplace, the clatter of horse-drawn carts, and the distant chime of bells from a temple. Everything felt so real, too real. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a large estate. The man led him through an intricately designed wooden gate, past guards dressed in old-fashioned military uniforms. At the entrance, Adam hesitated, his heart pounding. "Wait here," the man instructed. "The commander will see you shortly." As Adam stood there, trying to piece together his fragmented thoughts, a new figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with a commanding presence, the man moved with an almost predatory grace. His piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through Adam, and his expression was unreadable. "I'm Commander Ethan Hawke," the man said, his voice deep and steady. "You're late." Adam tried to stay composed as Commander Hawke's piercing gaze assessed him. His heart raced, but he straightened his posture, determined not to show weakness. "I apologize for the delay, Commander," Adam replied, trying to sound calm. "I had some unexpected difficulties on my way here." The commander studied him for a moment longer, then nodded curtly. "You're here now. That's all that matters. Follow me." They walked through the corridors of the estate, each step Adam took making him more aware of the strange reality he had fallen into. Khan City, southern provinces, a commander who clearly expected him. It was as though he had stepped into a historical reenactment. Except, this wasn't a reenactment. It felt all too real. Commander Hawke led him into a large room filled with maps, scrolls, and military paraphernalia. Other men, dressed in similar uniforms, stood at attention as they entered. Adam couldn't help but notice the way their eyes flicked toward him, appraising and curious. "We have been waiting for your expertise, Dr. Warren," Hawk said, addressing him by a name Adam did not recognize. "Your studies of ancient texts and your knowledge of strategic history have been crucial to this mission. The southern provinces are on the brink of war, and we need to act fast." Adam blinked. Dr. Warren? That wasn't his name. But he wasn't about to correct the commander now. Not when he had no idea what was going on. "I'll do what I can to help," he said cautiously. "But I'm still catching up on some of the details." Hawk raised an eyebrow. "Details? You mean the force we're up against, don't you?" Adam hesitated. "Yes," he lied, hoping it was a vague enough response. Hawk stepped closer, his expression hardening. "The force you spoke of before is real. The one controlling the warlords. We need to locate it. That's why you're here." Adam's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what Hawk was talking about, but his instincts told him that he was playing a dangerous game. The commander seemed to think he knew something vital, something about a hidden power controlling the warlords who ruled over the fractured regions. "Right," Adam said slowly. "I just need some time to review my notes." "Of course," Hawk said, his expression softening. "We'll give you access to the archives. But remember, time is running out. If we don't act soon, this country will fall into complete chaos." Adam nodded, though his mind was racing. He needed to figure out what was going on, and fast. Before he could ask more questions, another voice interrupted their conversation. "Commander," a deep voice called from the doorway. Adam turned to see a tall man standing at the entrance. He was muscular, with sharp features and an intense gaze. His short black hair and neatly trimmed beard gave him an air of authority. But there was something else about him, something dangerous. "This is Caleb Shaw," Hawk said, gesturing toward the newcomer. "He's been our top strategist and will be working closely with you." Caleb's dark eyes met Adam's, and for a moment, neither spoke. There was a strange tension in the air, a feeling that Adam couldn't quite place. It was as though Caleb was sizing him up, and Adam felt an odd mixture of curiosity and caution. "I look forward to working with you, Dr. Warren," Caleb said, his voice low and smooth. "Likewise," Adam replied, though he still wasn't sure what exactly he was supposed to be working on. As the meeting continued, Adam found himself increasingly out of his depth. They spoke of battles, hidden forces, and ancient texts, none of which he had any real knowledge of. He tried to follow along, nodding when appropriate, but his mind was spinning. After the meeting, Caleb approached him as they left the room. "You don't seem like the type of man who usually gets involved in military affairs," Caleb said, his voice quiet but firm. Adam chuckled nervously. "You could say that. I'm more of a scholar than a soldier." Caleb's gaze lingered on him for a moment. "You'll need to adapt quickly, Dr. Warren. This isn't just a scholarly exercise. Lives are at stake." Adam nodded, though inside he felt a growing sense of dread. He didn't belong here. He didn't know how he had ended up in this strange world, but he needed to find a way out. And yet, there was something about Caleb's intense gaze that made him feel drawn in. As they walked through the estate's courtyard, Caleb glanced at him. "You'll be staying in the guest quarters. I'll have someone show you the way." Before Adam could respond, Caleb placed a hand on his shoulder, his touch firm yet oddly reassuring. "Stay sharp, Warren. You're going to need all your wits about you." Adam gave a tight smile. "I'll keep that in mind." Adam's sleep was fitful, filled with fragmented images of a war-torn landscape. When he finally woke up, the early morning light was filtering through the window, and the events of the previous day rushed back to him. The sudden crossing into this mysterious world, the intense stares of Commander Hawk, and Caleb Shaw's unsettling presence all swirled in his mind. He wasn't sure what this place was, but there was no doubt now he was involved in something far more complex than he could have imagined. After quickly freshening up, Adam was escorted by a soldier to the archives where Hawk had promised he could find information. The room was large, with towering shelves packed with scrolls, ancient books, and maps. The air smelled of parchment and ink, a strange yet familiar scent that reminded him of his research days back in his real life. Adam wasted no time. He needed to know what he was dealing with. Sifting through various documents, he found several accounts of battles between the warlords and something referred to as the hidden force. These writings were cryptic, alluding to a shadowy power that manipulated the warring factions from behind the scenes. As far as the text suggested, no one knew exactly what this power was, but it was described as a force capable of controlling not just people but the very elements themselves. Adam's fingers hovered over a particular passage, his pulse quickening as he read aloud quietly. And thus the commanders from the northern and southern provinces have been but pawns to a force older than the stars. It lies dormant, waiting to be awakened. And when it rises, no army, no strategy, no alliance shall stand in its way. He swallowed hard. This wasn't just an ordinary war, there was something supernatural about it. Reading ancient prophecies now, are we? The voice startled Adam. He spun around to see Caleb leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, his sharp eyes watching him closely. "I didn't hear you come in," Adam said, his heart still racing from the surprise. Caleb pushed off the frame and approached him, his movements graceful yet deliberate. "That's because I didn't want you to. You've been in here for hours. Find anything useful?" Adam hesitated, unsure if he should share his findings. Caleb was clearly someone powerful in this strange world, but Adam couldn't yet tell whose side he was truly on. "Just trying to understand what I'm dealing with." Caleb's lips curled into a half smile. "You'll need more than old scrolls to survive here. Whatever you think you're learning, it's only the surface." Adam closed the book and stood, meeting Caleb's gaze. "Then why don't you tell me what's really going on?" Caleb's smile faded slightly. He took a step closer, his face only inches from Adam's. "You're not ready for that yet, Dr. Warren." Adam's breath caught at the intensity of Caleb's stare. He wasn't sure if it was the proximity or the way Caleb seemed to see through him, but he felt an undeniable tension between them. Caleb reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, the grip firm but not uncomfortable. "When you're ready, you'll know. Until then, don't trust anyone." Adam's pulse quickened, but he didn't pull away. "Not even you?" Caleb's smile returned, this time more dangerous. "Especially not me." With that, Caleb turned and strode out of the room, leaving Adam with more questions than answers. He stared at the doorway long after Caleb had gone, his mind racing. The power this world held was unlike anything he had encountered before. And now, he had to navigate not just the mysteries of this world, but also the enigma that was Caleb Shaw. As Adam gathered the scrolls and prepared to leave, a sharp pain flared in his head once again, just like the night before. The room spun, and the low hum that had signaled his arrival here returned, growing louder. He gripped the edge of the table for support, his vision blurring. Was this another shift? Was he about to be pulled back to his own world, or deeper into this one? But just as quickly as it had started, the pain faded, leaving him breathless but still standing. The hum receded, leaving only the sound of his ragged breathing and the faint rustling of the scrolls. Whatever was happening to him, it was connected to this place, and to the mysterious force controlling the warlords. But what was the connection? And why was he the one being drawn into it? There was only one thing he knew for certain: he needed to find answers. And somehow, he had the feeling that Caleb Shaw, with all his secrets, was going to be a part of that journey. The days following Adam's unsettling encounter with Caleb blurred together. He threw himself into studying the ancient texts, trying to make sense of the cryptic prophecies and references to the hidden force that seemed to control the warlords. His mind raced with questions, but no answers were forthcoming. Every time he thought he was making progress, a new layer of mystery seemed to unfold. Despite his growing unease, Adam couldn't deny the pull he felt toward Caleb. There was something about the man's intense demeanor and quiet confidence that intrigued him. Even though Caleb had warned him not to trust anyone, least of all him, Adam found himself drawn to the strategist's sharp mind and undeniable physical presence. One evening, after hours spent combing through dusty scrolls, Adam decided to take a break. He wandered through the corridors of the estate, his mind still churning with thoughts of the hidden force and the looming war. The cool night air was a welcome relief from the stuffy archives, and he found himself walking toward the courtyard where he had first met Caleb. To his surprise, he found Caleb there, standing by the edge of a small fountain, his back to Adam. The moonlight cast a soft glow on his features, highlighting the sharp angles of his face and the broad expanse of his shoulders. He looked up at the stars, seemingly lost in thought. Adam hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should interrupt. But before he could decide, Caleb turned his head slightly, sensing his presence. "You couldn't sleep either, I see," Caleb said, his voice low and steady. Adam stepped forward, his pulse quickening as he closed the distance between them. "I've been trying to piece everything together," he admitted, "but it feels like the more I learn, the less I understand." Caleb's lips twitched into a faint smile. "That's because the truth is more elusive than you think. What you're dealing with isn't just about power or control. It's about something far more ancient." Adam frowned. "The hidden force." Caleb nodded, turning to face him fully. "It's not just a legend. It's real, and it's dangerous. If it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic." Adam's mind raced. "But what is it? How can it control the warlords?" Caleb's gaze darkened. "That's what we're trying to figure out. But it's not just about understanding the force. It's about stopping those who seek to wield it." A tense silence hung between them, the weight of their conversation settling heavily in the cool night air. Adam felt a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. He was in over his head, but there was no turning back now. As they stood there, the distance between them seemed to shrink, an unspoken tension building in the space. Caleb's intense gaze locked onto Adam's, and for a moment, the world seemed to fall away. Without thinking, Adam took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "Caleb, But before he could finish, Caleb closed the distance between them, his hand reaching out to grip Adam's arm. The touch was firm, grounding, but there was something else. There's something raw and unspoken. "Adam," Caleb's voice was low, almost a whisper. "You need to be careful. This world is dangerous. You can't trust anyone. Not even me." Adam's breath hitched, but he didn't pull away. "Then why do I feel like I can?" Caleb's gaze softened, just for a moment, before the mask of indifference slipped back into place. "Because you don't know me well enough yet." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with a tension that neither was willing to acknowledge, but both could feel. Finally, Caleb released Adam's arm and stepped back, his expression unreadable. "You should get some rest," Caleb said, his voice once again cool and detached. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Adam nodded, though he knew sleep would be impossible after what had just transpired. As he turned to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something that went beyond their mission or the mystery of the hidden force. Whatever it was, Adam knew he couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. The tension in the air was palpable as Adam stood in the war room, surrounded by maps and men who were about to risk their lives. The stakes had never been higher. Commander Hawk's forces were preparing for the final strike against the warlords, but there was still one key piece missing: the true nature of the hidden force. If they didn't understand what they were up against, the entire mission could fail. Adam's mind was racing as he scanned the ancient texts scattered before him. Every moment felt like a countdown to disaster. The room buzzed with activity officers coordinating strategies, scouts delivering reports, and the clatter of weapons being prepared for battle. Yet, amidst all the chaos, his thoughts kept drifting back to Caleb. Over the past few days, Caleb's presence had become more frequent. They worked closely together, sharing insights and strategies, but there was an undeniable shift in their relationship. The unspoken tension between them had deepened, and every glance, every touch felt charged with something Adam couldn't quite define. As if summoned by his thoughts, the door to the war room creaked open, and Caleb strode in, his expression hard as ever, but his eyes betraying a flicker of something more. Without a word, he crossed the room and stood beside Adam, his gaze fixed on the maps in front of them. "We've received reports that the hidden force is gathering in the eastern mountains," Caleb said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hawk is preparing to lead an attack, but we don't know what we're up against." Adam finished for him. Caleb nodded. "Exactly. If we miscalculate, It could be the end for all of us. Adam's mind was already working through the possibilities. The ancient texts described the hidden force as something supernatural, something beyond human understanding, but they had to find a way to counter it before it was too late. Is there any other information? Adam asked, glancing at Caleb. Caleb hesitated for a moment, then pulled a small scroll from inside his coat. I found this in one of the hidden chambers below the estate. It's the only record that mentions the origin of the hidden force. It might give us a clue. Adam unrolled the scroll, scanning the faded words. His breath caught as he read the final passage. Only through the union of strength and knowledge can the hidden force be subdued. The key lies not in destruction, but in balance. Adam's eyes widened. This isn't about defeating the force, it's about controlling it. Caleb's brow furrowed. Controlling it? How? Adam's mind raced. The warlords, the battles, everything they've been trying to destroy each other. But that's not how the force works. It's about balance. The only way to end the war is to unite the provinces, not tear them apart. Caleb stared at him, realization dawning in his eyes. So you're saying we need to bring the warlords together? That's impossible, they've been at each other's throats for years. Adam shook his head. Not if they understand what's at stake. If we can convince them that controlling the hidden force is the only way to bring peace, they might listen. Caleb let out a long breath. It's a long shot. But it's the only shot we've got, Adam said, determination hardening in his voice. We need to speak to Hawk. Now. The following hours were a blur of hurried plans and tense negotiations. Commander Hawk was skeptical at first, but Adam's conviction won him over. With Caleb at his side, Adam presented the only path forward, bringing the warlords to the negotiating table under the banner of uniting against the hidden force. As they prepared to leave for the eastern mountains, where the warlords were gathered, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle had only just begun. The hidden force wasn't just a supernatural entity, it was the embodiment of the chaos and division that had torn the land apart for so long. And the only way to end it was to bring balance back to the fractured provinces. That night, as they camped at the edge of the mountains, Caleb found Adam standing alone at the edge of the camp, staring out at the darkened horizon. You're really going through with this, Caleb said, his voice soft. Adam nodded. We don't have a choice. Caleb stepped closer, his eyes searching Adam's face. You've changed since you got here. You've become stronger. Adam chuckled softly. I don't feel stronger. Half the time, I don't even know what I'm doing. You do, Caleb said firmly. You're the only one who understands this force. You're the key to ending this war. For a moment, the weight of Caleb's words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Adam turned to face him, his heart pounding in his chest. The tension that had been simmering between them for days finally came to the surface. And before Adam could stop himself, he reached out and grabbed Caleb's hand. Caleb froze, his eyes widening in surprise. But then, slowly, he laced his fingers through Adam's, his grip firm and steady. We'll get through this, Caleb said quietly, his voice filled with a certainty that Adam desperately needed to hear. And in that moment, standing at the edge of an unknown future, Adam finally believed him. The next morning, they marched into the heart of the eastern mountains, where the warlords had gathered. The atmosphere was tense, with every man on edge, weapons at the ready. But as Adam stepped forward, flanked by Caleb and Hawk, he felt a strange sense of calm. The warlords listened as Adam spoke of the hidden force and the need for unity. It wasn't an easy sell. Decades of hatred and mistrust weren't going to vanish overnight. But as the sun set over the mountains, something shifted. Slowly, grudgingly, the warlords began to understand that the only way to survive was to set aside their differences. And as the first tentative agreements were made, Adam felt the air around them change. The oppressive weight of the hidden force, which had been hanging over them like a dark cloud, seemed to lift ever so slightly. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. As they left the warlords' camp, Caleb caught Adam's eye, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You did it, he said. We did it, Adam corrected, his chest swelling with a mix of relief and exhaustion. But deep down, Adam knew that this was just the beginning. The hidden force was still out there, and the fragile peace they had brokered could crumble at any moment. But for the first time since arriving in this strange world, Adam felt like he had a purpose or reason to keep fighting. And as long as Caleb was by his side, he knew they could face whatever came next.